to Bhavina.
Good afternoon and welcome to the second webinar. Thanks to Carolee for introducing me. As she mentioned, my name is Bhavina. I'm the Senior Campaigns and Skills Policy Manager at Make UK and co-author of this report that we published earlier this week. I hope you joined us for our first webinar that we hosted on Tuesday in partnership with Sage, where we spoke to Will Bridgman from Warren Services and Rob Seinfeld from Sage about the key findings of the report. Today, we're actually going to be in conversation with two experts, so I'm delighted to be joined by Sarah Dander, Head of Strategic Partnerships at Ingenuity, and Dick Elsey, Chief Executive of the High Value Manufacturing Catapult. Now, I've got lots of questions that I want to ask them based on the findings of our report, but also the fantastic work that they've been doing. But as my colleague said, if you have any questions, please pop them in the Q&A box and I'll keep an eye on that throughout the session. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Sarah, who's going to introduce herself and the work that she does at Ingenuity.
Thank you, Bhavina. Good afternoon, everybody. As Bhavina said, I'm Sarah Dander and I work for a company called Ingenuity. Some of you may have know us as SEMTA. We rebranded back in February. And we are a skills charity whose aim is to provide practical solutions for the engineering and manufacturing sector, whether that's individuals, educators, employers, sector groups, and to look to join up the dots and try and connect really good practice across the many and varied sectors that make up engineering and manufacturing. I'm going to talk to you today about a platform called Engage that we launched in partnership with the Made Smarter Commission, with Make UK and HVMC back in April as a response to the first lockdown. It was envisaged as a tool for engineers who were at rest, as we termed them, who'd been furloughed, to actually allow them to undertake professional development, upskilling, reskilling, and actually to start to develop their skills during what was a difficult time. So I will share my screen and take you through a very quick demo of the Engage platform. I would say that the platform is free for everybody. It is free to use, and everybody can sign in and get an account. So the platform has two sides to it. It starts when you log in with the Research Hub, which was very much developed as, if you like, a home for a range of different content. The Research Hub is powered by a chatbot and an AI engine. Sorry, just let me move my screen out of the way. When you log in for the first time, the chatbot will ask you where you're from, what you want to focus on, with some very simple questions, which will start to guide the content that it shows you. So that will lead to seeing different content depending on what you put into the chatbot. We've always got some top picks that we show people. But then it starts to give you recommendations based on what your answers are. We can narrow down what the engine shows us even more by setting some goals. And again, we've tried to keep this fairly simple, but in terms of I can tell the chatbot, the AI engine, where I need to be in a subject versus where I am now. And those subjects include both sort of technical subjects, different sectors, but also some of the really key soft skills and meta skills that people need in terms of sort of working agilely and being productive, and particularly relevant for today. Lots on digital technology, ranging from sort of cybersecurity right through to there we go, I've just gone over it, the Microsoft Office 365, because we find that people are still really keen to update some of their basic digital skills, as well as being able to start to look at some of the more technical ones. The Research Hub allows you to decide what it is you want to see. So if for some reason you were only interested in seeing podcasts, if you only had 5 minutes, and then you can also filter by the different providers. The Research Hub has a range of content that's, sort of a 3-minute read, 20-minute read, 12 minutes of video, some online courses. So a real range to suit, however much time you've got or what you're looking to achieve. And as I said, there's lots of curated content that starts to bring together a whole range of digital topics. So from, things like, analytics, Power BI, right through to some really good content around, more technical topics such as additive manufacturing. And all of the content that we've got on the platform has been curated or donated by partners. So our partners from the High Value Manufacturing Catapults have been really generous in allowing us to use some of their excellent content, particularly around the digital themes. So this is an example from, I think it's from the AMRC around additive manufacturing. And there's quite a lot of content on that topic, aimed at different levels of ability and interest. So I'm just going to use this as a shortcut to get to the second part of our platform, which is our academy, the Engage Academy. And this is where, if people are starting to do a particular course, if they are starting to want to develop their own learning journey, we'd built some learning journeys around the Made Smarter offering, focusing on basic digitalisation, with an introduction to industrial digitalisation, some units on IoT, robotics, cybersecurity, and you can go through the different learning journeys and start to see what you can do as part of that journey. If I click on one of them as an example, you will be able to see, and again, I've nicely chosen a HVMC centre, the MTC training. This is a piece of content from them looking at robotics. And our aim on the Academy is very much to build these learner journeys, so to try and help people go from having no digital knowledge and understanding through to getting the basics into first steps, and then lead them into the particular technology that they're interested in. And we see that we'll continue to work with partners such as HVMC, Make UK, other employers. We've got some really good content from Rolls-Royce on here, particularly focusing on that digital theme. I'll stop sharing now, Bhavina, and just happy to answer questions as we go along. And we can post the link to in the Engage portal. But I would encourage people to log in and have a look. It's all free, and there's a huge range of resource depending on which caters for everything you might want to know about different levels of digital, as well as signposting to some really good other courses through Future Learn, Open University, which take people into more detail about some of the more specialist topics.
Brilliant. That's really interesting, Sarah, and I'm sure we'll speak a little bit more about that as we go through the questions as well. I'm also delighted to have Ellis with us today. So as I mentioned before, he's Chief Executive of the High Value Manufacturing Catapult. You'll also know him from leading the well-known Ventilator Challenge. I think I speak on behalf of a lot of people, not just in our sector, but also amongst the public. I mean, even my own parents know about it as well, and they're not really into this stuff. But it was an incredible achievement. And I think for lots of people, they would say, oh, we don't make anything in this country, we don't collaborate well, we don't innovate well. But actually, it was a fantastic example of us collaborating. We had that technological engineering and manufacturing prowess that we can really build on in 2021. So I'm sure if we were in a room of people at the moment, there would be a big applause. So I'm going to do a little one here, but really thank you for all the work that you've done, the team and all the individuals that were involved. So I'll now hand over to you, Dick, to explain what you do, but also your role at High Value Manufacturing Catapult.
Thanks, Pavina. Well, thank you for that. I could spend the rest of the time talking about the incredible experience on Ventilator Challenge. And I will touch on it because it's very relevant to the digital skills piece. I think I need to set some context first, but we had to use digital tools in order to hit the timeframes that we operated in, and I'll explain a little bit later. But we took some risks with it and were richly rewarded by diving into digital really quickly. But I'll cover that a bit later. But what I need to do is to set context of why the HVM Catapult is involved in all of this. And for those who don't know what we do, we principally were set up to help companies bridge the gap of new emerging manufacturing technologies and helping get them scale up to a full industrial level and de-risk them. So I've got 7 centres around the UK. Sarah's mentioned a couple of them already. 800 million quid's worth of assets and 2,500 people involved in it all. And typically, a sort of project we would do, we're helping Airbus develop their next generation wing in carbon fibre, and we're doing that at full scale. So we're developing the manufacturing processes with Airbus and their supply chain, how to put that together. It's just an example. But no surprise, and amongst all of that, then the use of digital tools. So we're very much a kind of test bed for advanced digital tools, the whole digital twinning piece, the use of virtual and augmented reality in the workplace. So we are a place to try these things out and experiment. So we've got kind of like a strong track record and history of that. But our job is principally to develop the technology. But we have found that through our 9 years of operation, that just working on the technology alone is not enough to get the thing embedded in the UK. And I'm just going to share my screen. Here we go. So I'll just bring it up to full size. So we have found that if we're going to get the impact from these technologies in the UK, and our job is to make sure the value from these is embedded in the UK, it's not just about working on the technology. You have to develop the skill sets that go with it, because it's fine delivering, brand new process to develop next generation wings, but if people aren't skilled in the art of managing 17-meter lengths of carbon fibre robotically applied, then it's going nowhere. And then the other thing we've got to engage in is the supply chain to back that up. So, we look at it as a three-legged stool of technology, supply chain, and the workforce skills. So we found ourselves right in the middle of that. In order to deliver our mission, we've got to get involved in the skills piece of, basically having the right skills in the right place at the right time. And what we've done is to develop what we call a skills value chain. And we've done this in partnership with the Gatsby Foundation, who helped fund it, and with Ingenuity and Make UK. And it's pretty straightforward, really. So how do you go about developing these advanced capabilities? Well, first of all, the HVM Catapult and like-minded partners that work with us, people like the National Physical Laboratory, we're working on these advanced technologies. So we probably got the best possible insight into the future needs of manufacturers. So, we work with 4,500 industrial clients a year, and for us to be of use to them, we've got to get right underneath their skin of their advanced technologies and their technology plans. So when you aggregate that all together, it gives us very good insight into where the future trends are happening. So we can distill out of that a whole load of know-how in foresighting. So we and others are a really good source of that. So there's a determination to do that. We then have ability to define that into roles, occupations, and standards, and then begin to develop the curriculum and the content. And Sarah's just put up some stuff about 3D printing of additive manufacture. So we in the Catapult have got the know-how to develop the modular material, because we're using these bits of machines every day. We know how they operate. So a chance to develop all of that modular content and working with Ingenuity to get it assured and validated and recognized as a content, and then start to pass it into the wider cascade. So into, train the trainer, because we've got the knowledge, how do you then dissipate that and then scale up into the whole downstream educational piece, whether that's through FE colleges or whatever. So there's a process of convening, establishing what the needs are by using the UK's best foresighting capability, of which we're a major part, curating it, as in developing the materials and quality assuring them, and then getting on and delivering them. So it's pretty straightforward stuff, but I think those who are on the webinar who've been involved in the whole skills piece will know that that it's littered with dozens of well-intentioned initiatives of people trying to get to grips with the skills thing. And this in particular has brought the process into sharp focus. Is we do need to have a systematic approach for doing this. And I'm pleased to say we are gaining traction with this. We're in partnership, as I said, with Ingenuity, Make UK, and we've begun to get a lot of the sector skills leads, aerospace, automotive, marine, defence, all very comfortable with this process. We're kind of joining forces, and any sciencey people, it's like Brownian motion at the moment. All these initiatives all sort of not quite lined up, but by doing this disciplined approach, we can begin to get some alignment. And this has got really good traction with BEIS, with Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, and very importantly, with the Department for Education. So what we're trying to do now is just to kind of get this populated, start the foresighting work, and start to pilot the development of modular content. And you've seen some of that pilot stuff nicely curated in Ingenuity's platform. So that's the process. Now, if you didn't think that digital skills were important, I'll just reflect for a few seconds on, I'll de-share. Ventilator challenge. This is the whole process of manufacturing industry repurposing itself to make ventilators for the NHS. And we found ourselves badly stuck in March with a critical shortage. And so government asked industry if it could step up and make them. So we formed a consortium of aerospace, motorsport, automotive, rolled our sleeves up and got on to scale up intensive care ventilators from a kind of production rate of two a day to ultimately we ended up producing 400 a day, which is quite an extraordinary, it's been an amazing journey. But the key message for people on today is that in order to deliver 20 years worth of production in what was 12 weeks, in essence, we had to rapidly accelerate the product development process. And to do that, we deployed a whole load of digital tools simply because we had to. And these were things that we've been sitting on in the catapult. We've been playing with some of these in a sort of sandpit type environment. So we just had to go and take the risk and deliver them. So there were things like one single source of data, a single database, democratizing all of the information on the project. So, single access data was a kind of fundamental underpinning. We used augmented and virtual reality tools to teach the thousands of people that needed to be trained. We couldn't train them alongside the production because of the COVID rules. So we had people remotely learning through the use with goggles on. And it all seemed, when in a normal environment, when you're looking at these things, you think, what's the application industry? All looks a bit far-fetched and a bit whiz-bang. We had to use it. And I tell you what, it worked fantastically. So once we committed to and got in there, the rewards of using these digital tools were enormous. And the costs of them actually were relatively insignificant versus the rewards we gained. And it's made us all think, all of those the companies that have been involved in that process, is like, what stops us from doing this in our day job? Why did it take a crisis for us to jump in and make use of these tools when principally, most of them work pretty well first time out the box. The power of having single data and everybody's accessing it and data democracy was just incredible, and it has made us think, what stops us from doing that thing in our day job? So there's a sort of cohort of people who've been involved in it who are really determined to try and change the landscape, the way we operate. And there's some big companies, Ford, Airbus, McLaren, Siemens, so that very interesting. You've got a bunch of senior industrialists that are agitating now to try and break down the barriers of why we should be holding back on the use of digital tools, because they are so powerful. Okay, I'll stop there.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that, Dick. That perfectly leads on to actually my first question, because when we set out doing the research for this project and looking at what companies had done in investing in digital skills or what they hadn't done, and kind of that adoption of technology piece, what we found is that companies who had taken the steps to invest in digital skills fared better during the pandemic. And what I mean is they saw increases in productivity, they saw greater collaboration. But like you just said, why does it take a pandemic or a big geopolitical event or a recession for us to actually see the benefits of working in more digital ways, not just for our sector as a whole, but for businesses and individuals? So Sarah, I'll go to you first, but then Dick, obviously do follow up.
I think in reality, Bhavina, I think there's always been pockets of really good practice, and lots of people were doing some really good things. I think what the pandemic sadly brought us was no choice. And I was immediately thinking of necessity being the mother of invention, which I don't know whether it's still a relevant phrase, but I think when people had no choice, and even just looking at sort of the use of technology for remote working, let alone sort of examples from an industrial digitalisation perspective. I think what it allowed us to do was actually overcome some of the doubt and suspicion that companies had, in terms of simple things that actually, people could work remotely, people could manage their own time. And I think sometimes it's the not necessarily understanding and not having the time to try out things unless we're actually forced to. I think we're also busy just sort of running to stand still and trying to do our day jobs, that actually quite often there isn't time to try out new things, and in this circumstance everybody was forced to. And I think, in lots of circumstances, I've had lots of conversations with employers across the sectors who actually have just learned things about their workforce and how people can work that they will just carry through once we're back to some form of normalcy.
You're on mute, Vivian.
Oh, I did it. That is the phrase of 2020, isn't it? My own digital skills need brushing up. But you use the phrase "no choice," Sarah, that actually people just had no choice but to just embrace it and do it. Do you think that then, and this is directed to you, Dick, that there was almost like this sense of failure or perceived barrier to adopting this technology or trying to implement a new piece or upskill somebody and then not really sure what outcome that would lead to, so we just didn't do it? But whereas the pandemic just forced you to say, right, we're just going to try and we'll see what happens.
I think Sarah's right in that, the sort of we were forced into doing things, but then we've analysed it. Why under normal circumstances do we hold back from that? Well, it's principally about people taking risk, and if you've got a project to deliver, then you're probably going to want to use tried and tested processes. You're not going to get fired for trying tried and tested processes, and it's about people being prepared to take a risk to do stuff. And I've always had a view, actually, particularly if you've got a business that runs projects, is to use the projects as a change agent, actually, and you use it to do things differently. So, for instance, right, we're going to do this new product introduction, and we're going to commit to doing it a different way with the introduction of this digital tool. I mean, I think that's the way to do it. So that the risk is pooled, if you like, is that it's done with endorsement. You've got senior air cover because the business has made a collective decision to introduce something as part of a project. I think it's actually quite tough for people in the day job. Like, okay, we're going to introduce this, and I'm thinking, people taking a risk to do it. So we've got to try and reduce this risk aversion piece and empower people actually to get on and do more with this, because we found actually once you'd empowered people, and introduced the tools, the pace with which people picked them up was just extraordinary. And when we had problems, of course we did, people just fixed the problems, and we had so many, with the challenge, we had so many people needing to make this stuff work, that we had, pop-up IT solutions for things, just to make it work. So, this stuff it's not that much of a risk, basically, what I'm saying. We were richly rewarded for little cost and little risk.
Yeah.
So that's a key thing. And if you can pool that risk in your company, so that certain individuals don't feel isolated in taking the risk with introducing things, have a go at it together, Yeah. But the biggest risk of all is doing nothing.
Yeah, and this is something that Will Bridgman said as well, and he's works at Warren Services, that actually you just have to constantly embrace that culture of change and just trying things new. So it's and taking your employees with you on that journey. I was really surprised that when we carried out this project, that a third of companies hadn't invested in any digital training in the last year, none whatsoever. And I think when we think about those left behind groups, or maybe the fact that we have an older workforce and that they might need upskilling, that can be quite concerning. One of the barriers that they cite quite often, manufacturers, is it will cost too much. I might not have the time. The provision isn't flexible enough to suit my business needs. Sarah, I'm going to go to you, because Engage is a platform which enables you to be able to use sort of flexible online training that can fit around your needs. Do we need to, as a sector, embrace that kind of new way of learning as well as working, which the pandemic has forced?
I think we do, and I think part of the challenge for busy employers, busy employees, is the knowing what is it that they should be learning, what skills should they be gathering. And I think the skills foresighting process and the skills value chain that Dick outlined is really going to help in that, because it's going to start to give those signals and those indications of actually what's coming down the road that people should be looking at. I think online learning and platforms like Engage are really helpful in that you can dip in and dip out. You can do everything from, just read about what does additive manufacturing mean. I think part of the challenge around digital is that it's wrapped up in lots of different, it's a different language. So people use terminology and words that if you're not part of that community, you don't necessarily understand. So I think there's a piece that we can use the Research Hub and other resources to demystify that, so that people, when somebody starts to talk about additive manufacturing, people can start to at least understand some of the terminology. And we've done quite a lot of work in trying to help with that understanding. I think the other piece is about just being networked into what's available locally. I would say, without exception, all of the combined authorities, the local enterprise partnerships, the growth hubs are all doing some really good work in this digital space. Whether it's boot camps, whether it's signposting to provision, and lots of that is funded. So there's lots of funded activity out there. I think it's just having the time and knowing where to look for it. And I think quite often a mix of online and I'll say face-to-face, because face-to-face can be via sort of technology, is quite often the best solution. I think online is great for lots of people, but some people need that face-to-face, even if it's via Zoom or Teams or Google Meet, to just help them to adopt those skills.
If I can just add to what Sarah's saying, I mean, we've talked about the skills value chain and the work that we're doing to align the forces. Make UK, Ingenuity, the sector skill leads. A really important part of the skills value chain is it's not about the first stage of education or training apprentices. I mean, there's a key part of it. It's all about upskilling and reskilling and making the content workable for people in that in that environment. So, you know, if you're in a role and you need to learn new skills to pivot into new territory, it might be, you know, that you're making internal parts for internal combustion engines, and you're going to start to need to make electric motors and power electronics devices. Is how do we equip people for that? We have to make that process digestible for people who are already in work. So a key element of it is to have this sort of modular content, which can be picked up with flexibility. So it's not all about, you know, having to lock yourself away in a classroom for months, but we're very much configuring it for the whole reskilling piece and making it fit in with people's work and life.
Yeah, and I think it comes up in every conversation we have. I've worked in skills for a fair few number of years now, and quite often you see sort of like new shiny initiatives come out, new government comes in, new programs launched, and we see that kind of chop and change in the vocational and technical education landscape, which is you know, trying to solve the problem that we've all been speaking about for so long. But do you think maybe that our education and skills training landscape is just not moving quick enough to adapt to the kind of skills that we may need in 5 or 10 years? Because I feel like sometimes we go round and round and have these conversations saying the same thing. Well, we need, you know, new standards or new training. And when you speak to manufacturers, they'll say, well, actually, I can't access the training I need for my business. And quite often I think there's that scary statistics in the OECD that says something like 60% of kids will be in jobs that haven't even existed yet. So what can we do as a sector to make sure that our education and training system is moving quick enough to keep pace with that change that we're seeing in technology?
Well, yeah, if I can go first, it certainly isn't moving anything like fast enough, and that's why you've got an activist group that I've just described, and that's seeking actually to form a national manufacturing skills task force. So I'm going to be blunt here, from turning this whole thing from feeling like a bit of a victim support group, that it kind of doesn't work and everybody's, it's actually, let's come out guns blazing with a consistent process, the skills value chain, consistent mindset, and start to gather some force behind it. And what I can tell you is that is now being recognised by Department for Education, that their ears have now pricked up. They've actually realised that there's a responsibility now in educational terms to go much beyond the model that they've got now. We have to develop this upskilling and reskilling model. And yet it's been slightly off their radar, but I can tell you that the force we've got behind it now, it really is central, and we're seeking to get funding out of them to start pilots, to do the foresighting, the content development, start to get the thing rolling. So yeah, we're on it, and we've got a bunch of key players, and we want to bring in more, because it's not an exclusive club. We want to bring more in to get aligned. So if we can all start operating this way, it will become a much more powerful force. It'll get listened to. It'll equip FE colleges with the right material. It'll create a whole new set of processes for people to access material. It just feels like the right thing to do, and it is moving from kind of wringing our hands over it to being active and doing something about it.
Yeah, definitely.
If I can add quickly, if I can add to that, I think it's the connected piece. It's actually is all working together, rather than actually either at a subsector level or at a local level, everybody trying to sort of make their own way. You know, if we're all following the same roadmap, or we're all on the same journey, we can actually make sure that we've got the right demand signals. We've worked out the what is it people need to be able to know and do. I like you, Bhavina, I've worked in skills and workforce development longer than I care to remember. But, I think sometimes we overcomplicate it. Upskilling's relatively simple. What is it we want people to be able to know and do, to be able to adopt new technology, adopt new ways of working. And I think there's that, if we can all work together to make sure that we understand the what, we can work with partners on the how. So whether those partners are in a specific sector or they're in a specific geography, it just makes so much more sense to actually work together to do it, rather than to invent everything at a local or a sectoral level. And I think Dick's right. I think we're starting to see that sea change, that actually everybody does want to work together, so that we can get that overall picture and the roadmap of where we need to go, and work with partners at a local level to actually work on delivery.
Definitely. I think it's really fitting that this week is also Tomorrow's Engineers Week. We had This is Engineering Day yesterday, and I think both are really good examples of when you collaborate, when you have partners, when you work together on these things, actually you can, in this particular example, change the perception of engineering. I think it's worked really well and something that we can build on. I actually wanted to just go back to something that you mentioned, Sarah, which was the what piece. So when businesses sit down and think about, right, digital skills, what do I mean by digital skills, which can be quite a basic thing for us when we always work in this field and when we're working with technology. But if you're a business thinking, right, I need to upskill my staff to be able to take advantage of some technology, I'm not quite sure what it is yet. What's sort of the first step you take, and how do you make that leap to say, right, this is the basic digital skills I need, and these are maybe the more advanced ones that I might need a little bit later on? And that either one of you could feel free to answer.
If I may, I'll start, because Dick will be able to add the more technical detail. I think when we use the word digital, we quite often all mean different things. And I think there's different types of digital. So there's personal digital, in terms of making sure, everybody can actually use the everyday tools that we need in our life, and sort of power what we do. So the ability to be able to join a Teams meeting, to be able to use a smartphone, all of those personal digital skills. And I think you then have digital at an enterprise level, so that the technology and the systems that power a business, whether that's from sort of accounting software or logistics. And then I think that the piece that we've been looking at is around industrial digitalisation. How can we digitize the the manufacturing and engineering process? And I think they're quite different but related things. And I think first of all, it's being clear what we mean by digital and what we're looking to do. I think it's also thinking about what do we want to achieve. And Dick's examples from the ventilator challenge, I think, are really relevant in terms of what as a business do I want to achieve, and therefore what skills do I need people to have? Because it's I think unless as a business you're clear about what your problem statement is, then giving people digital skills doesn't actually help. You need to understand the why. Why would you adopt digital? And I'll do a little bit of a plug for we're doing some work with the Made Smarter pilot in the Northwest, just developing a series of little workshops that actually start to explain the different technologies and why you might want to adopt them, what the business benefits would be. And having then understood that, we can then work to look at actually what does that mean for people and workforce development.
I'll just add to that, no surprise that the High Value Manufacturing Catapult sees an important remit in focusing on the industrial digitalisation technologies. And we are working at kind of both ends of that. We're working on kind of high-end solutions to try and create what we're calling enterprise architecture. So wouldn't it be great if all of these industrial digital tools could have a common platform? Yeah. So interoperability and all that. So kind of at the high end, we're working on that, but also very cognizant of companies wanting to get onto the whole kind of Industry 4.0 bandwagon. I think I need to have some of it, Dick, but I'm not sure where to start. We get an awful lot of that, and that's been borne out in many Make UK surveys. I'm really unsure where to start, but I think I need it. So at the other end of industrial digitalisation, we've been looking at some really simple tools to get on the journey, and equipping machines, even old machine tools, with a few sensors to gather some data to see how it's performing, make process improvements off the back of that, are entirely affordable. And we've put together some package of Industry 4 for less than £1,000. You know, you can equip a machine tool with some instrumentation, drive it off an iPad and get something really useful from it. So the journey is dead easy to start. It doesn't involve a 7-figure consideration with SAP or something like that. You know, this digital journey can have very modest initial steps, and we're doing quite a lot of work in the Catapult, particularly to help small and medium enterprises on that journey.
Yeah, I think cost always comes up as a barrier. Is it going to cost me so much as a business? Do I need to make this upfront investment? I don't know if I'm going to get a return on it. Is it the right time to even make that investment considering everything is going on? But you're right, sometimes the sort of small investments you make now don't have to be, you know, thousands and thousands.
Yeah, it's all about, we'll come back to this whole risk-taking thing. It's all about gaining confidence to be able to take smaller risks and introducing different things and getting quick rewards. And I can tell you, you know, from this Industry 4 for less than £1,000 type stuff we've been doing, the rewards are really quick. I mean, payback in 2 or 3 weeks for some things, you know, it's yeah. Then people realize that the risk wasn't that great. So it's just encouraging people to take a little bit of a risk, and it doesn't have to be spending £1 million on a new system. You know, you can start to get on this journey for very modest sums of money and get used to the processes, get used to the way it operates, and start to get familiar with it, and then take on more. So you know, it's not an all or nothing.
Yeah.
It's a journey that can start with very small steps.
Speaking of taking small steps, one of the things that came through quite strongly in our report was harnessing that power of that next generation. So Generation Z, the ones that are super digitally fluent, who code in their spare time, can do all sorts of stuff, like IT support. It makes me sound old. But a lot of the time as a sector, we always say, you know, what kind of knowledge and expertise do we need to share with Generation Z? But actually, if we flip that on its head, what can we learn from Generation Z when we think about the digital skills, which for them are just, it comes natural, they know it. But what can we learn from that generation and apply that to maybe some of the more older members of staff that we might have in our businesses?
Well, I think digital fluency is infectious. And I'll just give you an example of very unlikely circumstances, which I never thought would happen, is, you know, within some of our centres, we've got gaming engineers. So people who come out of the gaming industry. And if you'd asked me 3 or 4 years ago, I'd have said, what on earth would we be doing having gaming engineers working alongside us? But what they've been doing, because their ability to have visualization, you know, so to the image-rich, fast refresh rates of, you know, gaming imagery, is if you can couple that with some real data, real engineering data, you've got incredibly powerful visualization tools that convert really complex things into really easily digestible stuff that are, you know, that looks like a video game, you know, and it's just dead easy to look at. And so that really interesting combination of embracing that generation of gaming coders and bringing them into a proper engineering environment has worked fantastically. It's amazing, you know. And the only thing I did say to those on the call is, you know, listen to the younger people in your business that have got these skills. You know, tune into them. Yeah.
Sarah, you wanted to add in?
I think my answer was going to be very, very similar. And interestingly, we've developed a tool called Skills Miner, which is actually, I mean, it's an attraction tool using Minecraft, so using gaming technology to interest people in engineering. I think the point I was going to add was around the importance of peer-to-peer learning. So not all learning is necessarily formal. It's not necessarily sat in front of a laptop or sat in a classroom. I think there's a real opportunity to learn from our colleagues, and actually to learn from you know, those people who are much more digitally fluent than necessarily I am, and to give them the opportunity to be involved in the pilots and the tests and the, you know, the risks that you're taking. I think there's a temptation to think that, you know, when we're piloting something or we're trying something new, that actually it can only involve either the senior people or the people who know everything and have been there a long time.
Yeah.
Whereas actually what you need is that that team. You need that team of sort of the senior, there's somebody who's been there a long time, and the new thinking, the thinking that isn't constrained by we've always done it this way, and can see the digital solution. So I think they've got a tremendous part to play, and we just need to make sure that we're involving and listening.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm conscious of time, and I want to give you both some time to sort of make any closing remarks. But I just had one question for both of you, and I call it my sort of like magic wand question. But if you had one recommendation that you could make to government about how we can support businesses to invest in digital skills and why it is so important that we do now, what is that one recommendation that you would make? And Dick, I'll go to you first, and then Sarah next.
Well, we've just described a process where we've got, I think, now critical mass in the industrial side to understand what it is that we need to do to equip people with the right skills, is plea to government, listen to that and fully equip us to deliver. Mm-hmm. Don't try and do anything different, no new initiatives, just focus on this, help us get this over the line and make this the way we do things around here.
I think my answer's the same. I just use slightly different words in that we need to take that national joined up approach to building a modular, a flexible, an open and openly accessible framework of digital skills, qualifications, accreditations, badges, all of we need, and then focus on regional and local delivery. So we have that joined up, connected approach.
Brilliant. Well, we've published the report, but I'm sure there'll be lots of follow-up, especially with our call for a national skills task force. But before I sort of make any closing remarks, I don't know if you maybe wanted to add anything to any of the other questions, or you didn't have it, or if you had anything else you wanted to mention. Nope.
No, I don't think so.
I was just going to say a stat that came to my head was, I think the Royal Academy of Engineering once did a piece of work that found there were over 600 different STEM initiatives. So when we talk about that kind of consistency and that clear landscape and signposting, it couldn't be more needed. So yeah, I'm all signed up for it. So I just wanted to again say thank you both very much for joining us today. It was a really fascinating discussion. We'll be sharing this obviously on our website. For me, I think there's been, both for the last webinar we did and this one, the sort of 5 key takeaways. First, it's disrupt or be disrupted. This was something that Will Bridgman said, and I think businesses can't afford to not take digitalization and investment of digital skills seriously anymore. It has to be central to the work that they do. Second, I would say, and slightly controversially, there's only a digital skills gap if you sit back and do nothing. I think being proactive and making it central to your workforce planning is really important. Third, harness the power of the Generation Z. They know things and think about things completely differently to us. Tap into that power. Fourth, you can actually train for the digital future, and Ingenuity's Engage platform is an example, and the work that's been done around developing the skills forecasting tool is again another great example. And then finally, something that I know our sponsors Sage would say is don't fear the cloud. That can certainly help your business. It doesn't mean that the cloud has to be the answer to everything, but actually companies like Sage can really help you take that first step in digitalization. So just to say, I hope you've enjoyed this conversation as much as I have. If you haven't seen already, please keep an eye out for the webinars on our website. Get involved in the conversation, the call for the National Skills Task Force, which both Ingenuity and the Higher Value Manufacturing Catapult are supporting. And once again, thank you to our brilliant panelists and also our host, Sage, for hosting today's event. So I hope you all have a lovely rest of the day. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right.